In this video, I'm going to reveal the unknown truth about Bigfoot. Bigfoot is real. He has been spotted, but he's not who you think he is. You'll have to watch to the end of this video if you want the whole story. I've never actually told this story to anyone, and here I am telling it to literally dozens of people online. This is kind of a weird one, so please just bear with me here. It's not something which you tell to people at parties or they're gonna think you're crazy. When I was just 8 years old, I went with my family to Muir Woods. For those of you who aren't total nerds, Muir Woods is a forest north of San Francisco, named for the famed conservationist John Muir, who had a torrid love affair with Theodore Roosevelt. Sorry, that was the last episode. If you're like me, you're more familiar with Muir Woods as the third moon of Endor. It's a truly beautiful hike with gigantic trees that seem to go on forever. I mean, just look at that. It's no wonder why George Lucas saw this place and thought it was like something from another planet. Or moon, I guess. Anyway, my family headed there for a weekend hike. My parents, my brother, and myself. At that age, I wasn't a big fan of hiking. I was a much bigger fan of flan, and I'd rather be spending my Sundays playing Star Wars video games than seeing where the movies were filmed. But what can you do when you're 8? We arrived at the park and started the hike. It was about half an hour into the hike when I got bored and wandered off. I didn't mean to. I was just trying to keep myself entertained, as an 8-year-old does. So I pretended I was running around with the Ewoks. After a moment, I realized I was separated from my family. But this is where things started to get crazy, so you're gonna want to keep watching. No one was around. It was just me, the wilderness, and my imaginary Warwick Davis in a tiny bear suit. And that's when I saw him, out in the distance. Sure, he was partially obscured by trees, but I know what I saw. It was tall, hairy, striding through the woods, with an almost graceful step. No, it wasn't Chewbacca. It was Bigfoot. Like the actual Bigfoot, out there in the woods of California. I watched long enough for it to become a little bit more clear and then disappear into the woods. And then I freaked the hell out. I went running, screaming back to my parents. Through strained breaths, I attempted to tell them what I had seen. And to this day, they still insist it was a figment of my overly active imagination. But I swear, I know what I saw. For years, I tried to convince myself otherwise. It was a bear, but bears don't walk like that on 2 legs. It was my imagination, but nothing in my memory of my imagination has ever been so vivid. So I saw what I saw, and finally I'm taking the time to figure out what it was. And if you want to know what it was, you're gonna have to keep watching. According to the show Finding Bigfoot, is a cryptid hominid, a primate which cryptozoologists believe may exist somewhere, but have yet to definitively prove. And sightings indicate that he has an average height of 7 foot 10 inches, right on the money for what I saw that day. So I started digging a little deeper. One of the most famous pieces of evidence for Bigfoot is known as the Patterson Gremlin footage. It was shot in 1967 in Bluff Creek, California. California. That's where Muir Woods, California is. Coincidence?
I think not!
Now, I recognize that Bluff Creek is 243.69 miles away from Muir Woods, but according to my calculations, carry the 1. Yes, I believe that it is possible for a nearly 8-foot tall bipedal creature to cover that distance in 32 years. But why would Bigfoot move further south? Is he actually a bird? It seems unlikely. So this required more research. I looked at the trends in the state of California between the 60s and the end of the millennium. Could it be increased wildfires? No, there haven't been any wildfires in the Bluff Creek area since the 1930s. Perhaps it was increased interest in the search for Bigfoot following the release of the Patterson Gremlin footage, so he was trying to avoid people. And while this is potentially compelling, you must remember, this was before the internet, so there probably weren't as many people showing up as we would have today, say if Ghost Adventures revealed a demon was loose at a Walmart in Twin Falls, Idaho. I just sensed I was missing something, and you'll be missing something if you don't watch to the end of this video. And then, while I was browsing Reddit for Bigfoot information, I came across a post with this image. At first, I was just gonna scroll right on by, but then I started to think. LGBTQ acceptance is something that has increased dramatically since the 60s, and San Francisco has long been known as the epicenter for these lifestyles. But that's silly. What could that possibly have to do with Bigfoot? Just a coincidence, right? Maybe not. You see, in the 80s, a man named Mark Merlino began holding funny animal parties at sci-fi fantasy conferences for people who would dress up in animal costumes. These first parties were at WesterCon 38 in Sacramento, California. It was around this time that all sightings of Bigfoot in the Bluff Creek area ceased. Suddenly, there was an increase in sightings in the Bay Area, as if these funny animal parties triggered a change in Bigfoot's living situation, almost as if he felt more accepted further south in California. You see, I believe that Bigfoot is part of a very particular group, a group which was not widely accepted socially in the 60s. So for a time he hid in the wilderness, far away from civilization. But as society became more accepting, he felt he would be more comfortable in an area he believed would accept him. While I cannot prove definitively that Mark Merlino is Bigfoot, I believe I have made a connection, without any shadow of a doubt, that Bigfoot isn't a cryptid hominid. No! He is a misunderstood human in an animal costume. In other words, this leads us to the undeniable, absolutely conclusive conclusion: Bigfoot is, and always has been, a furry. Or something like that. Happy Pride. What's that? I missed it? Dang. I was really hoping to cash in on that sweet, sweet rainbow money like all those other big corporations that definitely care and don't just throw up a rainbow logo because it's good for business. Well then, happy unaffiliated with anything story about a furry, I guess. Subscribe, or Bigfoot will climb into your bed, and I hear he snores.